Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something really fundamental for communication.
Absolutely. Something that goes beyond just, knowing the words.
Exactly. We're not just talking grammar rules or how big your vocabulary is, although, yeah, those things matter.
Sure.
But we're looking at what it really takes to speak English, not just correctly, but naturally, and crucially, with confidence. Like, you really mean it.
Yeah, like a pro, as they say. That jump from just knowing the language to actually using it effectively smoothly.
Right. We're exploring the how, the less obvious stuff.
Like your tone of voice, how you hold yourself, your body language, even how you keep a conversation going without it getting awkward.
Yeah, all those pieces, they combine to create this overall impression, and honestly, they can make a huge difference in how people understand you, how they perceive you.
Definitely.
So we've gathered some really interesting sources for this. We've got material looking at why confidence is so foundational.
The bedrock, really.
And some specific techniques for, keeping conversations flowing smoothly.
Avoiding those silences everyone dreads.
Right. And we also dive into the science behind nonverbal communication, that whole silent language thing.
Which is fascinating. Plus some really practical tips and phrases pulled from English learning materials, too. Things you can actually use.
Our goal here, by unpacking all this, is to kind of give you a clearer path, maybe even a bit of a shortcut.
A shortcut to sounding more like a native speaker.
Yeah, partly that, but also just feeling more comfortable yourself, more impactful when you speak English. It's about really connecting.
Yeah, let's get into it.
And here's the kicker, the thing that really grabbed us. What if the actual words you say, especially when you're talking about feelings or trying to make an impression,
Right.
what if they're only a tiny fraction of the message?
It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? But yeah, so what some of the research suggests.
We're going to unpack that surprising idea and give you some tools, some things you can actually try out, like today. So let's dive in.
All right, so where do we start? The sources seem pretty unanimous that confidence is the first step, the foundation.
Yeah, they really hammer this home. One source in particular makes a very strong case for just how crucial confidence is, especially now.
They don't mince words, do they?
Not at all. They lay out this argument that statistically, confident communicators just tend to do better.
How so?
Better job opportunities, apparently, higher earnings, even reporting better quality relationships. It's positioned less as a soft skill and more as a real advantage.
Tangible asset.
Yeah.
And they also talk about this kind of mismatch, right? It's a supply and demand issue.
Yeah, especially with younger generations, they suggest. There's a high demand for good communicators in work, socially, pretty much everywhere.
But maybe not enough people who feel truly effective or confident in their communication.
That seems to be the argument,
Yeah.
which, if you think about it, creates a bit of an opening.
How do you mean?
Well, it suggests you don't have to be this, perfect public speaker. Just being reasonably good, okay or pretty good at getting your point across clearly and with some confidence, that can actually set you apart.
Right, because maybe the average baseline isn't as high as the demand. So just being decent puts you ahead.
Exactly.
They even used a pretty striking comparison to illustrate its value, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, that was bold. They basically equate being a good communicator in today's world to having, highly desirable physical traits. Being exceptionally tall or fitting conventional beauty standards.
Wow, that really elevates the perceived importance of communication skill.
It does. It frames it as a kind of personal capital. It definitely makes you stop and think about how much value we place on it, consciously or not.
It certainly does. So, okay, we understand confidence is valuable. But why is it sometimes so hard to communicate confidently, even if you know the language pretty well? This is where that gunk in the tap idea comes in.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's really vivid.
Explain it. How does that work?
Okay, so imagine your communication ability, the quality of it, is water flowing through a pipe.
Okay.
The water itself, how pure it is, how much pressure is behind it, that's your language knowledge, your grammar, your vocab, how well you understand English structure, you might have really good water.
Crystal clear potential.
Right. But then there's the tap. And sometimes the water just sort of dribbles out. Or it's blocked entirely.
And that blockage is the gunk.
Exactly. The gunk is all that internal stuff. Anxiety, feeling embarrassed, being afraid of what people will think, maybe bad experiences from the past.
Oh, psychological barriers.
Yeah, they clog up the tap. So even if your language knowledge, the water is high quality, the fear or the nerves, the gunk, stops it from flowing out smoothly.
Or powerfully.
Or powerfully, yeah. It really captures that feeling, when you have the words in your head, but you just can't seem to get them out right, or you feel like you're not really expressing what you mean.
Totally. That feeling of being unable to articulate, or just being plain scared to even start talking to someone. The potential's there, but something's blocking the delivery.
Yeah, the gunk.
Yeah.
So if that's the problem, how do we, clean the pipes? What do the sources suggest?
Well, the first step they suggest is fundamental, but maybe not always easy. It's about finding the root cause.
Of the anxiety.
Yeah. Asking yourself, okay, where is this fear actually coming from? What happens or what belief do I have that's creating this specific blockage? It's about a bit of introspection.
Like digging into your own history with communication.
Right. The source mentions an anecdote, I think, about the presenter having a specific relationship that really impacted their confidence, and understanding that connection helped them tackle their communication anxiety, pinpointing the origin.
Makes sense. You need to know what the gunk is before you can clear it. And they're not suggesting we aim for, zero anxiety ever, are they?
No, not at all. That's really important. The presenter in the source is clear they still feel anxious sometimes, or embarrassed, or worry about judgment.
So it's not about becoming fearless.
No, it's about reducing the gunk. Having less blockage than maybe others do, or less than you used to have. When there's less blockage, your actual language skills can flow more freely. And that ease, that clarity, is what people perceive as confidence.
Okay, so confidence isn't the absence of fear, it's just fear not getting in the way as much. Reducing the friction, that feels much more achievable.
It really does. It's about improvement, not perfection. Okay, so that's the internal foundation. But the sources also talk a lot about mastering the message itself, and that goes way beyond just vocabulary.
Right, this part was really interesting. It gets into the dynamics of the interaction itself. And a huge piece of this is your intention.
The why behind you speaking.
Exactly. Why are you starting this conversation? Your underlying intention apparently shapes the whole thing, sometimes before you even open your mouth.
Yeah, the source used a great example, comparing approaching someone just hoping for validation. Do they like me? Am I saying the right thing? Versus approaching with a genuine intention to connect. Like, I wonder what this person is like, or how can I make this a positive interaction for both of us?
And the outcome was different.
Hugely different, according to the source. The validation-seeking intention often led to this: awkwardness, tension. Conversations just died quickly.
Why?
Because that underlying neediness or self-focus acts like another kind of gunk, an interpersonal blockage. The other person often picks up on it, even subconsciously, and it puts them on edge.
It's like this subtle energy you bring. If you're worried about being judged, it's hard to actually be there in the moment with the other person.
Exactly. The source calls it awkward tension that blocks the flow. So the advice is pretty clear. Shift your intention before you even start talking.
Shift it towards connection.
Yeah, towards genuinely wanting to connect, listen, maybe share something positive, or just be your best self in that moment. When the goal is mutual engagement, not just getting approval, the tension tends to lift, and the conversation flows much better.
That's actually quite profound. It's not just what you say, but the whole spirit behind it.
It really is.
Okay, so intention is key. What about improving the actual water quality, as it were, the language itself? The sources mention something surprisingly simple here.
They did. Reading. Just
Yeah.
reading regularly.
Reading. That seems so solitary. How does reading a book help you speak better?
Well, the most direct way is vocabulary. You just encounter more words, used in different ways. It gives you more tools to express yourself precisely, especially with complex ideas. Avoids that feeling of being stuck with basic words.
Makes sense. And they suggested a certain amount.
Yeah, something like 30 to 60 minutes a day, if
Yeah.
possible. But they also had a specific technique for making the vocabulary stick.
Right. It wasn't just passive reading.
No, the idea was to actively notice and maybe highlight just one or two words each day. Words you kind of know, but don't really use yourself yet.
Not every single new word.
No, that gets overwhelming. Just pick one or two you actually want to start using in your own speaking. It makes them active tools, not just passive knowledge. Keep it manageable.
Okay, targeted activation. Reading with a specific goal for your speaking skills.
Exactly. And that connects to the second benefit they mentioned, which is maybe less obvious. Mental rehearsal.
Mental rehearsal, like
Yeah.
practicing the words silently.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
When you read, your brain isn't just decoding symbols, it's often internally sounding out the words, processing the sentence patterns, almost like simulating the act of speaking them.
Huh. Really?
Yeah, the source pointed to studies suggesting this is like practice for the speech circuits in your brain, even linking it to neuroscience findings. Reading strengthens those pathways.
Wow. So while you're learning stuff and getting new words, you're also subconsciously practicing the rhythm and flow of English without saying anything.
That's the idea. It's incredibly efficient, which is why they call reading a cheat code.
A cheat code.
Yeah, especially if you focus on reading things that help your future self. You know, books related to your job, your hobbies, your goals. You gain knowledge and improve your communication skills at the same time.
Double win. Learn stuff. Speak better. I like that.
Okay, so we've got clearing the internal gunk, setting the right intention, building language through reading. Let's loop back to confidence, but from a slightly different angle. More external factors and actual practice.
Right. The source mentioned improving your looks or appearance. That sounds potentially superficial.
They were careful about how they framed it. It's
Yeah.
not about seeking validation from others or conforming to some standard. It's purely about how it makes you feel inside.
Ah, the internal effect again.
Exactly. When you feel you look presentable or just put together, it can give your internal self-confidence a little boost. And that feeling, like we said, helps reduce the gunk. It makes you feel more capable, more comfortable just being you.
So it's about feeling good in your own skin, which helps you communicate better, not about impressing anyone else.
Precisely. And the suggestions weren't, extreme makeovers.
What kind of things did they suggest?
Really basic practical stuff, making sure your clothes fit properly, getting a haircut you like, getting enough sleep, that's a big one. Basic skincare, eating reasonably well.
Foundational self-care, basically.
Yeah. Things that improve your physical well-being often just make you feel better mentally and emotionally too. They generate that positive internal state that lets your communication flow. Simple, accessible things.
Definitely doable. And these contribute to overall well-being anyway. Okay, then they moved on to what they called maybe the most impactful method.
Active practice.
Yeah. And the big recommendation was speaking on camera.
That was the main one, yes.
Ooh, that sounds intimidating for a lot of people. How often did they suggest doing it?
Surprisingly little, actually. Just 5 or 10 minutes a day. Consistency over duration.
And they had proof it worked.
Yeah, the source mentioned the presenters showing their own old videos compared to recent ones. Apparently, the difference in confidence, clarity, just overall delivery was huge, a really powerful before and after.
Seeing that kind of progress in yourself would be amazing. But still, the camera. What if you're really nervous about being seen or judged?
They offered ways around that. Low-pressure options, like using it as a private video journal. Just talk about your day, your thoughts, whatever.
Like a diary, but spoken.
Exactly. Or record yourself and then upload the videos privately. YouTube unlisted, cloud storage, whatever. Nobody else sees it unless you want them to.
Ah, that's clever. So you get all the benefits, seeing yourself, hearing your tone, tracking improvement without the public performance anxiety.
Precisely. It's a safe space to practice, experiment, make mistakes, and just get comfortable hearing your own voice and seeing how you come across. It builds up that practical skill when real-world opportunities might be scary or limited.
Private practice for public performance makes sense.
So combine those simple self-care steps with consistent, even short bursts of practice, like recording yourself. That's a strong recipe for boosting both internal confidence and actual speaking ability.
A powerful combo indeed. Okay, so we've covered the personal groundwork. What about the interaction itself? Keeping the conversation actually going? Avoiding the dreaded awkward silence?
Ah, yes, the awkward silence. Everyone knows that feeling.
That moment when the conversation just dies
Yeah.
and you're both just sitting there.
Yeah, the sources define it exactly like that. When you hit a wall because nobody knows what to say next.
But they did make a point that not all silence is bad.
Right, absolutely. That's a key distinction. Sometimes silence is good. It gives people space to think. Or it can build anticipation, like a speaker pausing for effect.
Or in a movie, right before something happens.
Exactly. Those silences are intentional. It's the unintentional, uncomfortable vacuum we want to avoid.
So how do we keep the conversation flowing, like that river analogy they used?
Right, thinking of it like a river that needs to keep moving. The sources offer several tools. The first one is super simple. FOR.
FOR. What does that stand for again?
Family, occupation, recreation, like hobbies and dreams or future goals.
Ah. Okay, so if you get stuck, you just pick one of those.
Pretty much. They're common, generally safe topics. How's the family? What do you do for work? Doing anything fun lately? Any big plans for the future? Easy starting points or restarts?
But what happens if you ask, say, how's work? And they just say, fine. End of story.
The classic one-word answer. That's where the next technique comes in. Pulling the
Pulling the thread, like on a sweater.
Kind of. You take that tiny bit they gave you fine and gently pull on it with the follow-up question. You're trying to see if there's more to it.
So instead of just accepting fine, you'd say.
Something like, okay, fine's good. Anything interesting happened this week, or just fine? Anything unusual going on? You're inviting them to elaborate a bit.
Showing curiosity, giving them an easy way to say more if they want to, not being nosy, just interested.
Exactly. Helping them expand. Okay, so FOR to start, pulling the thread for details. What if you want to change the subject completely? How do you do that smoothly?
That's the segue, right?
That's the segue. Like in music, a smooth transition.
It stops it from feeling like a sudden jump.
Right. You use a phrase that links the old topic to the new one, even loosely.
Can you give that example again? From work to weekend?
Sure. If you're talking about work and it's winding down, you could say, speaking of work, I am so ready for the weekend. Or, wow, that reminds me, I need to make plans for the weekend.
Ah, speaking of, or, that reminds me. Great little bridging phrases.
They signal the shift, keeping the river flowing smoothly.
They also mentioned open-ended questions again here.
Yes, always good to reinforce that. Questions that need more than yes or no are conversational gold, because they naturally get the other person talking more material to work with.
Okay, what about showing you're actually listening, not just waiting to talk?
Crucial. That's where validating comes in. Verbally acknowledging you've heard and understood them.
How do you do that without interrupting too much?
Simple little phrases. Oh, interesting. That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. Wow, cool. Just small signals that you're processing what they're saying and valuing it.
Makes the speaker feel heard, encourages them to continue.
Definitely. And related to that is mirroring.
Mirroring, but not body language this time.
No, conversational mirroring. It means gently repeating or reflecting back a key word or phrase they just used, often in your follow-up question.
Like that photography example.
Exactly. They say, I'm into landscape photography.
Yeah.
You mirror, oh, landscape photography, cool. What kind of landscapes do you enjoy shooting most? You use their term to show you picked up on it.
It's like playing catch, they said. You catch their word and toss it back.
Yeah, keeps the exchange going, shows you're tuned in. Another technique, piggybacking.
Piggybacking on stories.
Yeah. When they tell a story, you respond with a brief related story of your own. Finds common ground.
Like if they mention travel trouble, you share your quick flight delay story.
Exactly. Shared experiences build connection. But they also said, if you don't have a related story, don't force it. Just use validation or mirroring instead.
Good to know. No need to invent things.
Yeah.
What about bookmarking?
Bookmarking is circling back. You remember something they mentioned earlier, and bring it up again later if there's a natural pause.
Like asking about that trip they mentioned at the start.
Yeah. Hey, earlier you mentioned you were going on a trip. How did it go? It shows you were paying attention the whole time and remembered what was important to them. Ties the conversation together.
So FOR, pulling threads, segues, open questions, validating, mirroring, piggybacking, bookmarking. That's quite a toolkit for keeping things flowing.
It really is. Covers a lot of common sticking points.
But is it always possible? Or sometimes does a conversation just end?
The sources were realistic about this. Sometimes, even with all the tools, a conversation just naturally concludes. And that's perfectly okay.
No need to force it.
Right. Part of the skill is recognizing when it's time to wrap it up gracefully, rather than desperately trying to keep it alive. Knowing when to push and when to sort of let it go.
That's a really important point. Acceptance is part of it too.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift now to that huge, often unseen element. Nonverbal communication. The silent stuff.
The body language, the tone, this is where that Morabian study fits in, the one with the percentages.
Exactly. Dr. Albert Morabian's research back in the 60s, it famously suggested that when we communicate feelings or attitudes, the actual words are surprisingly minor.
How minor? What was the breakdown again?
Only 7% of the emotional message came from the words themselves. Just 7%.
That's tiny, so where's the rest coming from?
38% from vocal cues, how you say it. Your tone, pitch, speed, volume.
The music of your voice.
Right. And the biggest chunk, 55%, came from the visual, body language, and facial expressions.
55%. So more than half the message about feelings is visual.
According to that study, yes. It means how you look and sound when you're talking about emotions is often way more impactful than the dictionary definition of your words.
Wow. So if your words say one thing, but your face and tone say another.
People tend to believe the nonverbal, especially for feelings. That mismatch creates confusion or distrust.
Okay, so what specific signals should we be aware of? The sources listed a few channels.
Yeah, things like facial expressions, tone, gestures, posture, even how close you stand to someone.
Facial expressions seem obvious. Smile means happy. Frown means sad, usually.
Usually. But they also mention micro-expressions.
Microexpressions, those super fast ones.
Exactly. Tiny, involuntary facial movements flash across the face for just a fraction of a second. They can leak your real emotion before you can consciously mask it.
Like a flicker of fear or anger.
Yeah. Spotting them takes practice, but they show how much our faces communicate even when we try not to. Things like anger, disgust, fear, joy, sadness, surprise.
Adds a whole other dimension to watching someone speak. What about the bigger picture? Body language, like posture.
Posture says a lot. Leaning away might suggest discomfort or disagreement.
While leaning in shows interest.
Generally, yeah. Leaning in often signals engagement, confidence. An open posture, arms and legs uncrossed, facing the person plus good eye contact, usually reads as attentive and open in many cultures.
And the opposite, slouching, crossed arms.
Can send signals being closed off, bored, or defensive, even if you don't mean it to. Crossed arms can just mean you're cold, though that's context.
Right, context is key. What about hands? Gestures.
Gestures can help. Nodding shows listening. Using hands can add emphasis and energy. But don't overdo it.
Too much is distracting.
Can be, yeah. Big, erratic, or constant gestures can pull focus from your words. It's about finding a natural balance that supports what you're saying.
And vocal cues, tone, and pace. We know they're important from the 38%. How do they work?
Tone is huge. It tells us if someone is serious, joking, sarcastic, excited, annoyed. The same words, that's great, can mean totally different things based on tone.
True. And pace, how fast or slow you talk.
Also revealing. Too fast can sound nervous or rushed. Too slow might sound bored, tired, or maybe condescending. The advice: slow down just a little bit.
Why slow down?
It tends to make you sound more confident, more thoughtful, clearer. Gives you time to breathe and think too.
Good practical tip. Breathe, slow down slightly. Now, the source is really stressed not looking at these signals in isolation.
Absolutely critical. You need the full picture and the context.
Why? What's the danger of focusing on just one thing, like crossed arms?
Because it's easily misinterpreted. Crossed arms could mean cold, comfortable habit, or defensive. You need to see. What's their face doing? Are they leaning in or out? What's their tone? What's the situation? It's the combination of signals that tells the story.
Looking for patterns and consistency.
Exactly. Which brings us to mixed signals.
When the words don't match the body language.
Precisely. Like saying, no, I'm totally fine, while your jaw is clenched, you're avoiding eye contact, and your voice is flat.
The nonverbal message screams, not fine.
Right. The sources call that mismatch a red flag. People will usually trust the nonverbal cues more. If you notice that kind of inconsistency, it might be worth gently checking in. You say you're fine, but you seem a bit stressed. Everything okay?
Acknowledges what you're seeing without being accusatory. And another big context factor, culture.
Hugely important. Nonverbal cues are not universal. What's normal or polite in one culture can be rude or confusing in another.
We mentioned eye contact varies. What else?
Personal space, how close people comfortably stand. Gestures, a thumbs up means different things around the world. Physical touch, even silence can be interpreted differently.
So communicating effectively in English, which is so global, requires being aware of these potential differences.
Definitely. You need sensitivity. Don't assume everyone interprets body language the same way you do. Awareness is the first step to avoiding miscommunication.
So overall, getting good at this nonverbal stuff is about paying attention.
Basically, yes. Observing people, how they sit, move, their expressions, their tone, does it match their words? That observation skill is key.
It's like learning to read the whole conversation, not just the text.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered confidence, intention, language building, flow techniques, nonverbals. Let's pull it together now with some really concrete phrases and practice methods the sources highlighted. The how-to part.
Yes, the practical toolkit. They identified specific phrases to help sound more professional and natural. What were the main ones?
Okay, foundational phrases. First, speak clearly.
Sounds simple but vital.
Means enunciating well, good pace, audible volume, like please speak clearly in the meeting, or I need to remember to speak clearly when I present.
Got it. Next.
Keep it simple.
Avoid jargon, basically.
Yeah. Use straightforward language. Get to the point, like let's keep the explanation simple, or keep your answer simple and direct.
Good advice. It often sounds more confident, too. Third.
I believe This was suggested as a stronger way to state an opinion than, say, I think maybe.
Shows more conviction.
Exactly. I believe this is the best option. I believe we should proceed. Adds weight.
Okay, number 4.
Sound confident. This one is about the delivery. Projecting assurance through your voice, your tone, your pace, even if you're nervous inside.
Fake it till you make it, almost. But focusing on the vocal aspect.
Kind of, like you sound really confident today, or I want to practice so I sound more confident.
And the previous points help with this. Speaking clearly, taking your time, which is the 5th phrase.
Take your time. Don't rush. Pause. Breathe. Think.
Directly counters that nervous tendency to speed up.
Totally. Take your time to answer the question.
Yeah.
He takes his time when he speaks. It sounds very considered.
Okay, those 5 are great foundations. Speak clearly, keep it simple, I believe, sound confident, take your time. Were there others? More fluency builders.
Yeah, a few more for navigating conversations. I'd suggest, for recommendations, from my point of view, for stating perspective clearly, let me clarify if you need to rephrase something, and that's a great question. Useful to acknowledge input and buy thinking time.
Nice. Those are really useful for discussions. So we have the phrases, but just knowing them isn't enough, right? Practice is key.
Absolutely essential. The sources stressed using these phrases actively in conversation. Integrate them. Don't just know them.
And consciously work on the delivery.
Yes. Focus on speaking clearly, apply take your time, and critically, practice intonation, the rise and fall of your voice. Flat intonation sounds robotic in English.
How do you practice intonation?
Recording yourself is huge. Listen back. Are you sounding monotonous? Where could you add more variation? Also, listen to native speakers and try to mimic their patterns.
Hearing yourself is probably eye-opening.
Definitely. Can be cringy at first, but so useful. And the sources also pushed mini scenarios or role plays.
Practicing specific situations.
Yeah. Like set up a situation. Okay, I need to disagree politely. Then practice using phrases like, from my point of view, or I believe, while also focusing on sounding confident and taking your time. Maybe even practice a segue.
Combining the different skills in a safe environment.
Exactly. Practice with intention. And related to this, they talked about noticing dialogue at different speeds.
Slow, medium, fast. Why does that matter?
Because real English conversation isn't always slow and perfectly enunciated like in a textbook. It speeds up, slows down, words blend together. Understanding that natural rhythm and variation is key to both understanding native speakers and sounding more natural yourself.
So observe how phrases sound at different speeds.
Yeah, and maybe even practice saying them faster or slower yourself in those role plays.
Yeah.
Get a feel for the natural cadence. It's not just the words, it's the music.
So it's the whole package. Internal confidence, intention, language skills, flow techniques, nonverbals, specific phrases, and practicing all of it together, including the rhythm and speed.
That's the essence of it. All those layers work together to help you communicate more effectively, naturally, and confidently, like a pro.
Wow. We've really unpacked a lot today. It goes so far beyond just grammar rules.
It really does. It starts inside, with tackling that gunk, building real confidence, then understanding that so much is communicated without words, through your intention, your tone, your body language.
And having that toolkit, FOR, pulling the thread, segues, mirroring, bookmarking, those key phrases gives you ways to manage the conversation actively.
But none of it sticks without practice. Consistent effort, trying these things out.
So for everyone listening, the invitation is really to start noticing these things more, in yourself and in others.
Yeah, maybe pick just one thing from our chat today. Try using FOR next time you feel stuck. Or consciously use I believe instead of I think.
Or maybe just record yourself for 5 minutes talking about anything and listen back, just focusing on your pace. Does it feel rushed, calm?
Small steps, they add up.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought to mull over.
Go for it.
Given how much communication relies on nonverbal cues, context, even cultural understanding, how might that change how you listen? How you interpret what others are really saying beyond just their words?
That's a great question. Are we sometimes missing the bigger message?
And flipping it around. Reflecting on your own communication, your words, your tone, your body language, your underlying intention. What part of that whole package are you most interested in exploring or maybe tweaking after everything we've talked about today?
Lots to think about there. It's an ongoing process for all of us.
It certainly is. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into speaking English naturally and confidently.
Always a pleasure. Until next time.